Tottenham TV back here for yet another Tottenham update, and we brought you the news yesterday regarding Dejan Kulusevski that he had joined up with the Swedish national team. However, he was seen limping around, and Alistair Gold jumped on it and started talking about it. But Dejan Kulusevski has just taken to social media to clarify the situation, and he says, just to clarify things, I'm limping because I had a small intervention in the knee 2 weeks ago, went in and took it out. What was not supposed to be there. The knee is great now. Thanks for all the support. God is the greatest, always. But the knee is great now.
I mean, it's good news there. Obviously, it's not good that there was something that wasn't meant to be there 2 weeks ago. And maybe that's kind of... And we know this patellar injury means like the kneecap has been like destroyed basically. So I wonder if there was something, bit of bone or whatever. I don't know. But
it's great now.
It's great now, but obviously I'm assuming there's still some sort of recovery period. The fact that he was limping isn't great in itself. It's good to know it wasn't to do with the original injury, it's something to do with something that's happened in the kind of recent history. But when we're going to see him, obviously he doesn't clarify anything about that. It's good that the knee is great. We'll see how long it takes for him to actually become playable, because it still could be a while.
It is, but it's like the most hopeful update that we've ever seen in a very long time with Dejan.
True. And the reality is we've heard so little.
Yeah.
So we don't really know how the process has gone, if it's gone well, if he's been setbacks. We've taken little snippets, about what he said and what other people have said, like Potter or whatever. We haven't heard explicitly about setbacks or anything like that, but we've heard so little about his recovery. It's great to hear from him personally. So let's just hope we start hearing more of it between now and the end of the season. But I don't know, I've got a feeling we won't see him this season. But
yeah, that's probably the most likeliest scenario. But it's great to hear that the knee is great, to be honest, with a player that we're just desperate to see. Look, whether we see him or not, we're still none the wiser. But it's nice to hear him, take to social media and actually clarify the situation which was going on yesterday.
Yeah, because there's obviously a lot of concern after people saw him limping, and a lot of people were like, oh, is his career over? He's still limping, what's going on? So I appreciate the fact that he addressed it publicly, but let's see how it kind of develops.
Yeah, he just must be desperate to get on the pitch. Like, it's a year and still we don't know when he's going to be back. He's out there in Spain with the Swedish national side. He's been in and around the camp at Spurs as well. He just must be desperate to help out the situation.
Oh, exactly, especially with the situation we're in, as you say, like watching us lose every week and fall further and further down the table and further closer to relegation without being able to do anything. Him and Maddison as well. It must be so hard for them, especially knowing what big players they are for us and what difference makers they can be. So it must be very, very difficult for them.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know the extent or anything for if he was to come back and how long it's going to take him to get to full fitness and stuff like that. But do you think that there's a possibility that if we were to go down, because he's been out for so long, to stick with us over next season just to get him back to full fitness? And I think that's a strong possibility.
Yeah, I think
of it.
he would. I think him and Maddison would both stay. I think they would both stay even if we went down, because they are going to need time to get back to their best and back to full fitness. I don't think there's going to be many teams. Look, I'm sure there'll be teams willing to take a punt on them, but I don't think there's going to be teams, a line of teams ready to spend decent money on players who've just suffered serious injuries. And I think from their perspective, their best bet would be stay at Tottenham, get them back into the Premier League, build your fitness, and then once they're back in the Prem, you can show your best, and then see what the future holds. But I think moving... I mean, you could move to a Premier League club, but then you have that added pressure. You're moving to a new team. They're in the Premier League. They got expectations of you because they've spent a decent amount of money on you, and you're still recovering from this big injury, and then that adds to the pressure. Whereas if you're at Tottenham in the Championship, you allow yourself maybe that time at a lower level to build up your fitness again, and that might be better.
I can see it with Decky, because Decky is still at kind of a decent age, 25. Maddison is he 30, going into his 30s next season? I
think he's 29 now, isn't he?
Yeah, so he's going to be 30 next season, and I mean, he doesn't have time to waste in his career anymore. I know 30 is, he's not at the end of his career. He's still got some good years ahead of him. Not saying that, but when you hit 30, you're thinking, wow, I'm in the twilight now. I've got like 3 years probably left at the proper top. So is he going to want to kind of spend one of those years in the Championship? I'm not so sure.
I think if he wasn't in the situation he's in, I think he'd definitely be off. But the fact he's had this ACL, look, maybe he backs himself to get back to his best very quickly. But I think he'd be open to staying in the Championship, I reckon.
All right, let's talk about Cuti Romero now, because an interesting development with him. As Marca reported first and foremost that Christian Romero has a special clause in his Tottenham contract that he signed last summer, which would let him leave for 60 million euros to Real Madrid, Barcelona or Atletico Madrid. Real Madrid like his qualities and are aware of this clause. Obviously, we did hear yesterday there was a report saying that Atletico don't want to spend more than, what was it, about 30 million on him, which is just nuts. However, Fabrizio Romano and Alistair Gold have both responded to those reports, and Fabrizio says that Tottenham had a gentleman's agreement with Romero. Should a top Spanish club approach him with a good amount, they will consider a departure. However, Levy was at the club at the time, and this is no longer the case. Nothing is on paper, and there is no release clause. And Alistair Gold says no release clause exists within Romero's contract. Therefore, any side looking to sign the 27-year-old centre-back would be required to cover whatever Spurs' asking price may be. And Paul O'Keefe also said that there is no release clause in Romero's contract, just a gentleman's agreement. And we all know how Spurs and the gentleman's agreements go. But
So I'm guessing,
I mean, I never thought. I mean, Daniel Levy historically has never put release clauses in anyone's contract. I think there's been one case of it over his whole tenure, and that was Toby Alderweireld, apparently, which was inherited.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if there was one, just because it was such a surprise to see Romero sign a deal. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they made an exception on this one to give him a release clause to allow it. Maybe if a top club comes into him and it's a figure that we're happy with, I would have been surprised if it was only 60. I think it would have been higher than that if there was a release clause in his contract. But knowing Levy, he does like a gentleman's agreement. We've heard it a few times now. We've heard it with Modric. He had a gentleman's agreement. Harry Kane, he had a gentleman's agreement. I think Bale came out recently and said he also had a gentleman's agreement with him. So there's nothing new with Daniel. He's also historically known for not keeping to his gentleman's agreement, because then that's what they are. They're nothing on paper. I don't understand why players agree to gentleman's agreements like having it on paper.
He kept with it to Luka Modric, didn't he?
No, he didn't.
He did.
He didn't.
What do you mean?
Because he had a gentleman's agreement that he would leave, and then he rejected the Chelsea bid.
Yeah, but he let him go the year after. That's what the gentleman's agreement was. Chelsea came in, and that's the summer that the gentleman's agreement was given.
He had a gentleman's agreement for that summer, and he said he didn't matter.
I'm pretty sure it was for the next summer, because he was like, I'm not letting you go.
One.
Yeah, maybe. But I thought the whole thing was that Chelsea came in, and he's like, no, I'm not letting you go to a rival in the same league. And if a club of a higher stature in a different league comes in, I'll let you go. And then he did.
I'm pretty sure Modric he publicly said he was unhappy because he had a gentleman's agreement with Levy that he could leave, and he wouldn't allow him to leave to Chelsea.
Right.
That was the whole thing. Maybe he made another one that summer saying, which is why would you agree to a second gentleman's agreement when he's already spat in your face? But anyway, we know of Harry Kane. He historically didn't care about that one either. Obviously, Gareth Bale, we ended up getting a record fee for him. He ended up leaving. When it comes to Cuti, I think we all kind of probably could predict when he signed that contract there was some sort of conversation about that, because there was heavy rumours that he was leaving, and we all expected him to leave last summer. So the fact there was some sort of agreement in place that we're hearing about now doesn't surprise anyone, does it? That if there was a big offer this summer, or a club that he would like to go to in Spain where he wants to go to, if there was an offer that satisfied the club, he'd be allowed to leave. But as you said, that was when Levy was here. Now Levy's not here. That obviously changes the dynamic of the agreement, because the person he made the agreement with isn't here anymore. So what that means now is there we've heard that the new owners anyway want to part ways, and they're happy to kind of facilitate a sale. That's what we've heard, and they believe it's best for everyone if both parties go their separate ways in the summer. So whether it's an agreement or not, I don't think it's going to affect him necessarily.
The thing is, right, with the gentleman's agreement with Daniel Levy, it might not be that relevant because I'm sure that Johan Lang and Vinay were in the room with the conversations of a gentleman agreement. So they're obviously still at the club. Obviously, we don't want them at the club, and they might not be at the club come the summer when the transfer business is getting underway. But as of now, that gentleman's agreement is probably still active because they're still at the club.
I mean, you can't have a gentleman's agreement that's active or not. It's not.
No, but you know what I'm saying. It's still there because the two parties are still there.
Yeah, but they don't have the final say, I guess. Yeah, look, they must have been aware of those conversations. So I think, obviously, the way the season has gone is that makes the most difference, isn't it? The fact that we're in a relegation battle, potentially going down, all that kind of stuff. If we were in a different scenario, I think no one's really talking about this right now, and we're thinking about the future with him. But because we're in the scenario we're in, he obviously doesn't want another season of this. We don't, as a club, the hierarchy don't want another season of him calling them out and all this kind of stuff and causing problems publicly. So I think from that point of view, how things have gone, that's going to dictate his future rather than any agreement that happened last summer. So obviously we all expect him to leave, don't we? That's probably going to happen regardless of whether we set up or not. He's probably going to be out of here.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. Look, a lot of people are saying get rid, they're not bothered. I would love to be in a situation for me where we want to keep him around and he wants to stay. But unfortunately, it looks like that just isn't the world we live in. No,
definitely not. I think there's an extremely highly likelihood of Romero leaving this summer. And we said that last summer, but this summer even more so because, look, we don't even know what league we're going to be in. That's a reality. In terms of the next one we're going to talk about is Archie Gray, publication called Team Talk, not the most reliable, says that Manchester United are interested in Tottenham's versatile, well, the report says defender, which is not even a defender.
Well, he's probably played more in defence.
It's true. But, I mean, he is a midfielder by trade. Says Archie Gray, who is capable of playing in defence or midfield. Borussia Dortmund, Chelsea and Aston Villa are all monitoring the situation very closely, with all three clubs keen to see whether Spurs suffer relegation, a scenario that could significantly lower his asking price.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think Archie Gray over the last couple of weeks has really kind of emerged as one of the best performing players at the club at this moment in time. I'd be gutted to see him go. If we do go down, can you see a world that Archie stays with all this interest, if this interest is real?
100%. I think he will stay. I think he'll be one of the few who stays because he's, again, a teenager. He's very early in his career. We signed him for big money. So I don't think we'll let him go unless we do get a good offer. Can you see our team's going to be spending, more than 40 million on him? Do you reckon we demand less than 40 million than we got for him if we go down? I think he's one of the ones who you have to build your future around. If you go down, you have to look to players like Archie Gray to build around because they're going to be your future.
I agree, but I think if there is interest from the likes of Borussia Dortmund, Chelsea, Manchester United and Aston Villa, Archie Gray has already left the Championship because he wanted to make the step up to the Premier League. And if he finds himself back in the Championship, then who's to say he might not push for a move?
He might think about it, but at the end of the day, he's under a long contract. We signed him for the long-term future of this football club. He didn't just move out of the Championship, he moved to a bigger club. That was his main focus. Obviously, Premier League as well, of course. That was obviously the main thing. He wants to be at a bigger club in the Premier League and show off his talent. But at the end of the day, again, he's still young. He's still a teenager. He's got his whole career ahead of him.
He's 20 now, yeah.
Well, he's still young, right? He's got his whole career ahead of him. I don't think he's going to be, refusing to turn up to training, refusing to play for Tottenham if we just dig our heels in and keep him. I don't see Tottenham selling him. I think Tottenham realise he's the future. There are players who may be older, who maybe want to get on with their careers, who maybe will be more open to. But I think players like Gray, they're the future of this club, and we're not going to throw everything out just because we go down. Some players are going to have to stick around, and it'll be the players who we base our future around who have to stick around.
Yeah. Look, there's so many moving parts to it. It all depends as well on what the players want, how their agents act, how the players end up acting, the fees, the bids that kind of come in. If a big bid comes in for Archie Gray, I think we accept it.
Yeah, it depends how big it is.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And I think, with with what he's showing right now, I think he's showing and proving that he's got a massive future in this game.
Do you think we get a bid bigger than 40 million what we paid for him?
I think it's possible. I mean, we put in a bid of 40 million without him having any Premier League experience.
I understand now. We all agree we overpaid.
Yeah, but I think he's proving that fee to be kind of right at this moment in time. So I think he's proving to a lot of Premier League clubs right now that he is a Premier League player.
Absolutely, but he's definitely good enough to be in the Premier League. Is he? These other clubs, are they going to spend, for 50 million or whatever on him? I don't see that right now. I don't see that.
I can see it from the likes of any Premier League club, like the Premier League clubs. Maybe not a Borussia Dortmund, but then again, Borussia Dortmund can show you how they can nurture young English talent because they've done it many a time before. I think he'd be so excited at the prospect of going to a Borussia Dortmund. But these English clubs, especially like Manchester United, who are like desperate for a midfielder next season, I don't see why not. I think they could. I think they would.
I don't think he would. I think he's staying. I don't think he's leaving in the summer if we go down.
I hope so. And last but not least, Luka Vuskovic. Bild are reporting that Barcelona are monitoring the youngster and add that it's clear that there have been talks with his agent Pini Zahavi. Vuskovic has been impressing in the Bundesliga this season, and seems to have plenty of admirers. Liverpool, Real Madrid, and Chelsea are also believed to be interested. Although it is reported that he would like to play in Spain at some point in his career. Any club wanting to sign Vuskovic will have to dig deep, though. He's currently valued at around 60 million euros, and there is a feeling that his price tag may rise if he impresses at the World Cup with Croatia this summer.
True.
Yeah, the Croatian manager has already confirmed that he's going to be starting 2 games over the course of this international break. So that shows you where they think he is in the kind of pecking order right in this moment in time. And I think the season that he's had, he's probably catapulted himself maybe to even a starting berth at the World Cup. That's how good this player is. And yeah, it's mad. 60 million they're saying they're going to charge now, and maybe even more come the World Cup.
Has a player, I'm trying to think, has a player ever had such a high transfer value without actually playing for his parent club? Trying to think.
Probably not.
Yeah, I can't think off the top of my
Probably
head.
not.
Look, there will be interest, especially if we get relegated. Even if we don't, there will be interest in him. It's about, it's just I guess about where his head's at, where Tottenham see him. Are Tottenham willing to take big bids for him? Do we see him as a big part of our future? Are we willing to dig our heels in, or are we willing to, in theory, getting, over 60, 70 million for a player that's never played for you is also good business in theory as well. So I can kind of see it from all sides. Obviously, I really am desperate to keep him. I want him to be our centre-back for the next, especially if Romero's leaving. I want him to be our centre-back for the next, 10 years or so. But it's just, I think if Romero and Van der Ven both leave, surely there's enough justification to dig your heels on Vuskovic. Why also let him leave as well? But if one of them stay, maybe he will also be open to offers for him. I mean, we know that if we go down, it's going to be such a precarious situation. All bets are off, really, isn't it, when it comes to anything? But if I was the club, I'll dig my heels in and say he ain't for sale.
Yeah, I think that if Spurs do end up staying up, he's going to be the Cuti Romero replacement, isn't he? He's going to be starting for us at right centre-back next season.
Yeah.
If we stay up. If we go down, then, I don't think he's going to stick around for much longer. Maybe we might loan him out for another year or something like that and see what happens. But I don't think he'll be playing for Tottenham Hotspur next season in the Championship. I really don't. So that is your Tottenham update for today. Let me know in the comments section below your thoughts regarding any of the news stories that we have spoken about today. Like, subscribe and comment, and as always, come on you Spurs.